misafirlerimiz hiç ara vermeden jeopolitik riskler oturumuna geçeceğiz. Jeopolitik riskler oturumundan hemen öncesinde bu konuya giriş mahiyetine konuşmasını yapmak üzere LBV Varlık Yönetimi Başkanı ve Baş Ekonomisti Sayın Cornel Meyer geliyor sahneye.
Thank you so much for your very kind introduction. It is always great to be in Istanbul, and I would like to thank Murat Yülek for his wonderful invitation to come and speak here. I see everybody's leaving. It's not that scary. You can stay. I will not scare you. Don't worry. It's quite a task to introduce a session on something as well, all-encompassing as geopolitics. What can you say that has not already been said? I would like to focus on the opportunity cost of geopolitics and the importance of not forgetting the economic policy imperatives to ensure the people can live prosperous life in the face of geopolitical strife. Geopolitical events take attention and resources away from the more mundane policies and activities needing to build strong economies and strong middle classes. A strong middle class is the key guarantor of economic and political stability. It is the foundation of any country. Let me first, as I'm introducing the session, give you a very brief overview on sort of what happened in the last 40 so years. We live in geopolitically challenging times, as I've already said, starting with Asia, where North Korea is continuously unsettling the apple cart with its nuclear threats. The biggest geoeconomic trend of the last 2 decades, though, was China's rise to economic prominence. In 1990, she ranked 11 amongst the world economic powers. In 2005, she ranked 6. In 2014, she took place 2. This introduced a shift in economic power from the west to the east. The increase in relative economic power went hand in hand with increasing political clout as evidenced in the South China Sea and in the PRC assuming her rightful place in the leadership of international organizations such as the UN and the Bretton Woods organizations. After the end of the Cold War, OECD countries lost in terms of relative economic power, and the non-OECD countries, particularly rising Asia, gained. New forms of economic management beyond OECD and G7 had to be found, and the G20 was created. Its nations produce roughly 80% of global GDP. So we can say it's a democratization of management of GDP, of the global economy as we have so much represented there. The Afghanistan conflict and the breakup of the former Soviet Union left a vacuum which unsavory forces filled. 9/11 marked a seismic shift in how threats were perceived. After the Iraq War, the Middle East and North Africa quickly unraveled, producing any number of failed states: Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Yemen. It all produced Al-Qaeda and IS, among others. The 2 regional hegemons, Iran and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, have been fighting for their rightful place in the region and in the world. The result of all of this jostling for power by state and non-state actors was an unrelenting stream of refugees and displaced people. Let us not forget that this country here, Turkey, houses 3 million Syrian refugees and has become an integral, if not the integral part of Europe's response to the refugee crisis. Lebanon and Jordan provide shelter for another 2 million plus. Turkey is nestled between Russia, Iran, Syria, Iraq, whilst being the most eastern member of NATO. This geopolitical position placed the nation on the Bosporus in a geopolitically crucial and not always easy position. Turkey is the link between the East and the West. 5% of global crude production reaches its markets through Turkey. The same can be said for grain, much less publicized. Much of Russian, Ukrainian, and Kazakh grain production is being shipped to its end users in the Middle East and Europe through Turkey. So if we don't have Turkey, a lot of people will go hungry. The country's biggest strength, its proximity to Europe, the Middle East, Russia, and the CIS is also its biggest challenge. Let us not forget that the geopolitical issues have led to a decrease in last year in tourists, and tourism is an important sector that employs a lot of people, of about 35%. Similar things have happened in Egypt and in Tunisia due to the post-Arab Spring and geopolitical strife, and also due to the terrorist attacks. Europe produces its own crisis, be it economic woes on the southern rim, or the EU or Brexit. Brexit was the result of a global anti-establishment feeling and may present a big challenge not just for the UK, but to the very fabric of the European Union. Brexit reinforced the centrifugal forces from Portugal to Poland and from Spain to Denmark. They will have to be, and they will be managed. So much for the overview. Let us now go to the message. Geopolitiks is made by the leaders. Its outcome has to be lived by the people. Geopolitics sets agendas that are often a huge distraction from normal life and normal activities. It allocates resources in line with overarching political agendas rather than building the hard and soft infrastructure needed for everyday life. Geopolitics sets agendas that override and take attention away from the more mundane but essential tasks of building infrastructure, maintaining school systems, and managing the economy. All things that matter to and define normal daily activities. Geopolitics is not mundane and very interesting, so the press and global pundits focus on them. These topics sell more newspapers and get higher television ratings than, let us say, discussing pension systems, which is very, very important. The world faces a huge pension crisis. We're all guilty of sort of being a little bit addicted to geopolitics. You know, when we have a chance at a dinner party to discuss what's happening with the pension system or something grand geopolitical, what are we going to talk about? Brexit is a point in case. The UK political system, and especially her civil service, will be tied down negotiating the country's exit from the European Union. We first need to find the negotiators, because we have not negotiated our own agreements in decades. Then the negotiators will be in a tedious and protracted process, commandeering a lot of resources of key ministries, which could otherwise be deployed to normal economic life. In between, there will be the normal distractions, and many of them, such as, for instance, the day before yesterday, the ambassador of Japan released a letter to the Prime Minister warning that Japanese companies will reserve the right to withdraw their European headquarters from the UK if negotiations will not guarantee sufficient access to the common market. After all that is done, we're not done yet. We need to overhaul the legal system because many of our laws and regulations are based on or taken from EU law. During that time, it will be hard to focus the minds and resources on vital things such as industrial strategy, and boy do we need one, developing regions, or the transport or school systems. These are really the things that touch everyday lives and jobs. You think Brexit is a problem, then look at the Middle East. Here, vital infrastructure was destroyed. As we said before, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya are pretty much failed states. We need, as already mentioned yesterday by Hubertus Fed from Frankfurt Main Finance, something along the lines of a Marshall Plan to reconstruct both the hard and soft infrastructure in this war-torn region. I was very struck when I flew out here on Sunday on Turkish Airlines, and I clicked in the screen on the destinations at Aleppo. And you saw a photograph of Aleppo circa 7 years ago. Buildings where normal middle-class people could live their lives. Beautiful, priceless, ancient art. All gone, all in rubble. So coming back, the Greater MENA region needs to accommodate more than just getting over strife. It needs to accommodate an ever younger demographic. It needs to create 100 million jobs over the next decade just to stand still as far as employment is concerned. Turkey is unusual in creating 1 million jobs a year. Most of the Middle Eastern countries don't do that, and they have growing populations. If we do not build the necessary infrastructure and create the right kind of education system, we will not create employment for these young people. This is vital for stability. If these young people are not given a productive employment, they will feel that they have no future. If they have no vested interest to contribute productively to society, the cycle of instability and violence will not end. Worse, it threatens to destabilize ever more countries. Idle young men do not build strong societies. Therefore, we must not forget the underlying economic imperatives when looking at geopolitics. We have to take care of the people and dedicate the necessary resources to enable their prosperous lives in peace. And this brings me back full circle to Turkey. We all have a vested interest in this country doing well and living in peace. So we need to invest in the country, in its people, and it is a geopolitical imperative, it is a humanitarian imperative, and it also can be financially very rewarding. Thank you very much indeed.